Welcome back to the channel. You already know it's your boy Norris back with another episode, another reaction video going over the most recent hip-hop albums of 2023-2024. Before we get into it, I'm gonna go over some releases. We're in the week of the new mixtape #INDICA. This one's dropping on Friday of this week, 12 o'clock in the morning, right on the dot. If you want to listen to it on SoundCloud, it'll be available a little bit later. I say around 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe like a little bit later than that. There's going to be a small delay on the SoundCloud release. You'll see it on SoundCloud around like 5 to 6 a.m. in the morning. Everywhere else, 12 o'clock a.m. right on the dot. Check out that mixtape once I drop it for Friday in a couple of days from now. I got plenty more music to come afterwards. I'm going to take a tiny bit of a break up until December. Around that time, then I'll be dropping new music. I got a lot more singles in the vault to release for the future. I'm just like setting things up, trying to figure out which song I want to drop next after the mixtape, making new beats, and like I'm doing a bunch of stuff right now. And the content I'm doing on my YouTube channel, that's going to continue on even after the mixtape. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, like, comment. It's gonna help me a whole lot. I'm gonna play out a few of the songs off of the album before we get into this one. Today we're gonna actually do the new album by Boldy James, Across the Tracks. I'm gonna play out a few of the songs to give you guys a snippet of how it sounds like. It'll be a little easier for me to explain this album, how I feel about the album through my viewpoints from track 1 to the last one. Then I give it a rating at the end of the video. I'm playing all of these songs through YouTube. Usually it's through SoundCloud, but I wasn't able to find this album on SoundCloud. The first track I'll play, this one's called Old Madden.
Just on the real members, real apex predator, real laid back. Every fight I had, it was like a steel cage match. Don't take much to initiate it quick.
The next track I'll play, this one's called Permission.
Big white bitch kinda resemble supercar blind. 20 killer straps cut, known for catching homies. Skinny nigga racked up, OT Savage Quandary.
This one's called Lampshade.
So how to duck the task force. Been having nightmares in my bed, toss and turn, and know they coming sooner than later. The compass.
So this last track I'll play, this one's called Undisputed.
In that wagon near it. Can't even lie, ain't even mad because I know the truth. For everyone my amigos throw me to, we trying to break the border. Hate to sound like
Boldy James, Across the Tracks. This is a new album by the Atlanta, Georgia rapper. I think he was born in Detroit, Michigan, and he was raised in Atlanta, Georgia. This is a rapper that's like sort of underground, but like not really. He's like one of the more famous rappers in the underground world. Worked with numerous rappers. He's actually signed under Nas's label, Mass Appeal Records, alongside Bishop Nehru. Fashawn, he's a frequent collaborator with The Alchemist. They have like 3 or 4 albums together where Alchemist is doing all the beats and Boldy James is doing all the raps. The Alchemist is a longtime friend of his and a frequent collaborator. Another fact about this guy, he actually got in like a serious car accident about a year ago. So this happened last year. I think he almost lost his life. It's cool to see that it didn't like take his life, you know what I mean? It's cool that he's still rapping till this day, and that car accident was a year ago. So right from the start, the beats gives off a Blue and Exile vibe. Most of the beats sound like something the Alchemist would make, but I'm pretty sure Conductor Williams was the main producer on this album. His beat making style sort of reminds me of Exile from Blue and Exile, a little bit of the Alchemist put together. So those two producers in one, but he's got a cool style with it. It doesn't sound exactly like those producers. He kind of brings his own uniqueness to it, but you can definitely see the influence throughout the album through his beats. Conductor Williams, I think he's one of the best producers in the game as we speak right now, and his raps complement the beats by sounding like himself. Boldy James, he has a unique style himself. Can't really compare him to too many rappers, but if I had to, I'd say he's like a little bit of Larry June, Rock Marciano. It's those two rappers together with an Atlanta accent. The way most ATL rappers sound, he has that in his flow and his style. style. You can definitely hear it. So it's like that mixed with Larry June and Rock Marciano, the like laid back flow where you're getting a similar type of lines where they're talking about a lot of street stuff, like trapping in the streets, getting money. It's basically that, but in a sort of like ATL type of twang. I don't know if it's like his accent that makes it sound like that, but that's like what his style sort of sounds like for me. Boldy James, his style is pretty much sharing his real life experiences in the streets, selling drugs, trying to survive in the streets, trying not to get arrested, trying his best to survive in the streets of Atlanta and maybe a little bit of Detroit because he's from Detroit too. That's basically his style, and like I said before, I compared him to Rock Marciano and Larry June, having that laid back flow. Like the voice reminds me of those two rappers. Very like chill, vibing out type of flow, not too violent, trying to speak knowledge over a drumless beat. The album Action Bronson did with like the Johan one, Sebastian one, or whatever, it gives me that type of vibe where a lot of the beats are drumless and percussionless, and it's more like the sample dominating the production. He brings this type of flow where it's more laid back and chill and very like, I won't say calm, but like pretty calm, you know what I mean? Like very laid back, but when you listen to what he's saying in his like lyrics, it's like hard hitting. It's some hard hitting stuff, some street stuff. He has that type of style, which I like a lot. It's cool to see like an older rapper, because he's a little bit of an older rapper compared to like what you hear in today's like rap music, but it doesn't really sound like that when you hear him rap. He sounds like he's a lot younger than he actually is when he raps. Just like Action Bronson's album, Johan Sebastian one, I really like the songs that are being sampled in the production of this album. I think Conductor did a good job picking out the right songs to chop up, create beats out of. It suits Boldy James' style, his voice, his like unique flow. It suits that very, very much, and it brings like a chemistry between his vocals and those type of samples to like a next level. Like the chemistry between the two, next level type of stuff, you know? Like he makes a drumless beat, which most people would probably think of as boring. It's like he can make that boring, simple formula of a beat. He can take the boringness out of it and turn it into something else, you know what I mean? Like this album, it's like it takes all of the ideas that Action Bronson used in the Johan Sebastian album that he dropped. It's like all of those ideas that they used in that album, Conductor and Boldy James took those ideas, they made it sound better with those same ideas, if you get what I'm saying. Because I didn't really like the Johan Sebastian album from Action. I think it's one of his worst albums I've heard. I like the unique idea that they used with the drumless beats, the heavily dominating samples throughout the production of the album. I enjoyed that idea. I think that's a fresh idea that a lot more producers should use in like future rap music. Conductor Williams took those ideas and took it to another level on this project. I feel like this is what Action Bronson was going for, but I feel like Boldy James made it, the style sound a little bit better on this one. So it's like you're taking the style of that album and then the skills and the effort that you get out of Conductor Williams and Boldy James, you slap it together and then you got an album like this. Another thing about the beats, I think Conductor Williams did a good job at making the beats closer to like the experimental side rather than classic hip-hop sounding beats that you would hear in a lot of like boom bap, old school rap songs from like the 2000s, maybe a little bit before, a little bit after. He adds a little more experimentation to it so that you're not getting the same looped sample and no drums beat every single track. It gets a little bit different when you're listening to each track. He does a good job at making every beat sound as different as possible, forcing Boldy James to switch his style, and you can hear it in each track. You can really hear Boldy James, his effort to switching his flow up depending on what type of beat he's getting, because every beat sounds very much different even though the same technique is being can use in every beat, because every beat is pretty experimental at the same time. You're not just getting your usual one-dimensional sample, no drums type beat. He makes every beat slightly different from the next, forcing Boldy James to switch his flow up slightly different between each track so that you're getting a completely fresh sound from every track. Boldy James and Conductor perfected that part a lot better. Like, there's some creative beat making ideas on this one, man, where there's beats that like I never really heard before. I never heard any other beat that's even similar. Comparing the beats on here to Alchemist, there's some beats on here where I'm like, this doesn't sound like Alchemist, man. I guess this sounds like Conductor Williams, right? Like, there's more than half of beats like that on this album where the beat doesn't sound like any other producer made it but Conductor Williams. So that's another part about the album that I really like. It's not super consistent throughout the album. It's not like every track is like that. There is a lot of tracks on here where it straight up sounds like the Alchemist made it, or Exile off of Blue and Exile. But for the most part, most of the tracks sound pretty unique and sound like something that only Conductor Williams would make. So overall, man, I think the album's pretty decent. It's not the greatest album I've ever heard. It's not a classic. Definitely above average in terms of what I've been hearing so far this year. The highlight of the album, I'd say, is the style itself. It's just one of those albums that you're not used to hearing in today's rap game. Can't really compare it to anything else. Can't really compare Boldy James' style or even Conductor Williams' style to any other producer or rapper. They have a very unique style and they really showed it on this album. The beats, the raps, everything is equally as unique and fresh sounded as each other. None of the tracks really like stood out. There wasn't really any bad songs on this album. The only bad thing I can probably say about the album, I didn't like how short it sounded. So like, this album has 11 tracks on it. Typically for a rap album in 2024, it is technically a short album, but I don't find it short for that reason, just because of the amount of tracks. It just sounded short as an album altogether. It sounds like the style and formula that they use to process this album, they could have taken that same style and expanded it a little more, where every track had a little more to it, because it's like, it sort of sounds like the production of the album was a little bit rushed. And I'm not talking about the sound of Boldy James' raps or Conductor's beats, because I think the beats were very well done on here. Boldy James is an excellent MC, excellent lyricist, very, very good rapper, and I think he's one of the better rappers out there. It just sounds like the way they put every song together sounds sort of rushed. It's almost like Conductor, he made a beat, he gives it to Boldy James, and Boldy is sort of like, he's thinking of ideas like really fast, and whatever he thinks of immediately he puts on the record and then moves on to the next track. Everything that's being recorded and put together is straight up gold, but it just sounds like the ideas that he uses for every track could have been expanded into like something a little bit bigger, making each track a little bit longer and full of like more than just raps and beats, maybe a little more skits, more like features added to each track. The album would have been like a better experience as a whole listening to it than what you actually get, right? The album is great. I don't know, man. It just, after the last track, you're sort of like, it's like you want more songs, but that's not what makes it seem like a short album. I think people would look at the album more as like, maybe not a classic, but I think people would pay attention to the album more. I mean, what he did with the album is still pretty good. I just think he could have done a little bit more to make the album even better. There's something missing with this album, you know? It could be the features. Maybe he should have added a little more features. In terms of a rating for this one, I'm giving this one a 7.7 out of 10. I enjoyed it for the most part. It's one of the most unique albums I think I've heard in a long time. Unique ideas all throughout the tracks. I think the beat making on here was very unique sounded as well. The chemistry between Conductor Williams and Boldy James, very strong. There isn't a lot of bad things to say about the album. I just feel like for the rating to go up, he could have done just a bit more to every track. 7.7 out of 10. Boldy James. Across the Tracks. This is another album reaction, another album review. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe to the channel. I got the mixtape dropping. Make sure you guys check out #INDICA, man. 12 o'clock on the dot for Friday. That's when it'll drop. SoundCloud, there's going to be a little bit of delay on SoundCloud. It'll be available maybe around 6 in the morning for SoundCloud. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, that's all I got, man. I'm out. Peace.